This week we've been following a series where we're looking at holding on to hope through difficult times. And today is our last instalment in this series, and we're going to be looking at how we can hold on to hope in the face of the future. We often face the future with worry or fear, but particularly at the moment and in this year when, as we've been looking ahead, there has been so much uncertainty. We have not known what's going to be happening in future weeks or months, and it's been impossible to predict what the situation will be this time next year. I think if we had all looked back to last year and had known what the world would look like now in a year's time, we would have been completely baffled and blown away. We just had no expectation or no idea of what the world was going to look like. And as we look forward now to normality returning as restrictions ease, many of us will be looking ahead, and though we're looking forward with hope and excitement about what's ahead, also feeling unsure and perhaps anxious about what is to come and what the lifting of restrictions means for us, and perhaps worried about our health, perhaps worried about friends and family, feeling overwhelmed about the number of events that are on the horizon and weddings and other big events that have been postponed. Perhaps for you, your worries are more tied up in your work or your career, perhaps for your children or your parents. It may be that you're looking forward to the immediate future with hope, but when you think further along the line, you begin to lose grasp of that hope. We often feel daunted or bewildered when we see huge tasks or challenges ahead. For me, one of the things that kind of always puts me in a bit of a spin about what the future is going to look like is thinking about how we're going to combat climate change, how we can protect God's world and try and reverse some of the damage that's been done in recent years. And if I stop to think about it for too long, it just feels like such a colossal task. If I think about it too much, about the distance that we have to go, and it feels as though anything that I do and anything that perhaps more than just me, lots of people do, isn't going to make any difference, that it's too large a mountain to climb, that there is too much to do that needs to be done. And as I've been thinking about impossible tasks, I thought of Ascension Day and the instructions that Jesus left his disciples before he went back to heaven. Jesus left his disciples a pretty huge task to go to the ends of the earth, to every disciple, to every nation, and make disciples. So I'm going to read Matthew 28 now, the Great Commission. Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Then Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always, to the very end of the age." In light of that instruction, in light of the Great Commission, that disciples must have felt overwhelmed by the enormity of the task ahead. Their futures were so uncertain. Perhaps they had a sense of dread or despair, thinking about the practicalities of a handful of people going to every nation and making disciples there. And yet, look at what that handful of disciples achieved. In their doubt and their fear, but with God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit working in them and through them, from that small handful of disciples on the mountainside, there are now more than 2 billion Christians across the globe. One of the things I love about this passage is at the very end of verse 17, when Matthew records that some doubted. These are people who had lived and worked and walked and talked with Jesus before his death and after his resurrection. And yet, being human and fearful and worried as we so often are, some doubted. But this is the part that is truly wonderful, I think. And it's that Jesus doesn't, at this point, separate them out and put the doubters to one side and the faithful to another. He doesn't speak only to the faithful ones, the ones who are 100% committed. He doesn't even have a different message for the two groups, or a different task for the faithful and for the doubting. Jesus has the same message, the same task, and the same promise for them all. And he makes that same promise to us as well. Surely I am with you always, to the very end of the age. So perhaps as we finish for this week, you can go back to one of the Psalms that we've read and reflected on over the course of the week and read it back to yourself, out loud or just in your head. Perhaps you'll choose Psalm 121, which tells of the God who cares for us day and night. Or Psalm 91, which speaks of God's protection and shelter. In Psalm 55, where we read that God hears our cries morning, noon and night. Why not share a few of these verses or a whole psalm with someone to encourage and help them too, to hold on to hope today and this week and in months to come.